Captain Hyun-woo stood at the observation deck of Luna Station, watching Earth spin slowly below. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from here, but Hyun-woo knew better. Humans were never truly at peace. They were always preparing for something, always ready to fight. The alarm bells started ringing at exactly 800 hours. Hyun-woo ran to the command center, where his officers were staring at their screens with wide eyes. Lieutenant Tae-min looked up from his console. "Sir, we have a massive contact entering Earth's orbit. It's huge, bigger than anything we've ever built." On the main screen, a ship appeared that made their largest vessels look like toys. It was gray and angular, covered in strange symbols that hurt to look at. The alien ship was 3 kilometers, long and moved with the slow confidence of something that had never been challenged. "Are they broadcasting anything?" Hyun-woo asked. "Yes, sir. On all frequencies, it's a lot of data." The communication officer, Sergeant Ji-hai, frowned at her equipment. "Captain, they're sending us what looks like a book. A very, very long book." Hyun-woo walked over to look at the incoming transmission. Numbers kept climbing on the screen. 1,000 pages, 5,000, 10,000. The alien message just kept coming. "How long is this thing?" he asked. 47,000. "Pages and still growing, sir." Admiral So-min's voice crackled over the intercom from Earth Command. "Hyun-woo, are you seeing this?" "Yes, ma'am." "What do you want us to do?" "Download everything. Let's see what our new friends want to tell us." It took 3 hours to receive the complete message. When it finished, the communication systems fell silent. Hyun-woo stared at the final count. 47,312 pages. Dr. Min-ho, their best linguist, worked with the translation computers for 6 hours. When he finally looked up, his face was pale. "Captain, you need to see this." The main screen filled with translated text. The header read, "Mandatory Integration Protocol, 447 Delta, immediate compliance required for planetary asset Earth-Sol 3. Hyun-woo read the first few lines and felt his blood pressure rising. The aliens were not asking for anything. They were telling Earth what was going to happen. According to the document, Earth had 72 hours to comply with a list of demands. All weapons above Class 2 energy output had to be surrendered. All government leaders had to submit to neural compliance implants. Human society had to be restructured according to something called Imperial Standard 891. The document went on and on. Taxation schedules, cultural modification requirements, lists of technologies that had to be handed over, rules about what humans could and could not do in their own cities. "They want us to give up everything," Min-ho said quietly. "Our weapons, our government, our way of life. They're treating us like we're already conquered." Hyun-woo scrolled through more pages. The aliens had calculated Earth's population, estimated their resources, and assigned them a classification. Primitive warrior. Culture. Suitable for manual labor after pacification. Primitive? Lieutenant Tae-min laughed bitterly. "We put people on the moon 200 years ago." "Look at this part." Dr. Min-ho pointed to a section titled Enforcement Procedures. "If we don't comply, they'll begin what they call administrative pressure. More paperwork, basically." The communication board lit up. The alien ship was hailing them directly. "Put them through," Hyun-woo ordered. The screen filled with the image of a tall gray creature with too many arms and eyes that looked like black glass. When it spoke, the translation came through in a flat, emotionless voice. "I am Coordinator Velthak of the Galactic Empire. You have received the integration protocols. Compliance is mandatory. You have 68 hours remaining." Hyun-woo looked at the creature for a long moment. Behind him, his officers waited. On Earth below, 4 billion humans were going about their daily lives, unaware that aliens had just told them to surrender everything they had ever built. Did you say mandatory? Hyun-woo asked. Correct. The protocols are not optional. The Galactic Empire has successfully integrated 12,847 species using these procedures. Compliance ensures peaceful transition. And if we refuse? Coordinator Velthak's expression didn't change. Refusal is not processed by our systems. The protocols account for all possible responses. Please indicate your compliance timeline. Hyun-woo thought about his grandfather, who had fought in the Third Border War. He thought about his sister, who ran a small farm in the Korean countryside. He thought about every human who had ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. I need to consult with my government, Hyun-woo said. You have 67 hours and 43 minutes remaining. The screen went black. Admiral So-min called an emergency meeting. Every major world leader joined the video conference. President Chen from the Americas, Prime Minister Okafor from the African Federation, Chancellor Petrov from the European Alliance. They all had the same expression, disbelief mixed with anger. They want us to surrender, President Chen said. Not negotiate, not discuss terms, surrender. Look at page 15,000, Chancellor Petrov pointed out. They've already decided what jobs we'll be allowed to have. Apparently, humans are suitable for mining operations and basic construction. They've never met humans before, Admiral So-min said. They don't understand what they're dealing with. Prime Minister Okafor laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. They think we're like the other species they've conquered. Send some paperwork, make some threats, and we'll just give up. Dr. Minho had been quiet during the meeting, but now he spoke up. I've been studying their language patterns. They're not even trying to be diplomatic. This is how they talk to people they consider property. Property? President Chen's voice was dangerous. Yes, sir. In their language, the word they use for humans translates roughly to useful animals. The room fell silent. Admiral So-min looked around at the faces on her screen. These were people who had led humanity through wars, natural disasters, and economic collapse. They had never backed down from anything. So what's our answer? She asked. Hyun-woo was still connected to the conference from Luna Station. He thought about the alien's words. Refusal is not processed by our systems. I think, Hyun-woo said slowly, it's time they learned to process refusal. Admiral So-min smiled. It was not a nice smile. Draft a response, Captain. Keep it simple. Hyun-woo opened a communication channel to the alien ship. Coordinator Velthak appeared on screen again, his black eyes reflecting the bridge lights. Have you prepared your compliance timeline? The alien asked. Hyun-woo looked directly into those alien eyes. Behind him, his officers stood straighter. On Earth below, Admiral So-min was smiling. Across the solar system, human ships began changing. Course toward Earth. No, Hyun-woo said. The alien's head tilted slightly. Please clarify. The protocols require specific compliance data. No, Hyun-woo repeated. We refuse. We will not comply with your protocols. We will not surrender our weapons. We will not restructure our society. We will not submit to your empire. Is that clear enough for your systems to process? For the first time, Coordinator Velthak's expression changed. His eyes widened slightly. This response is not within acceptable parameters, he said. Then you'd better expand your parameters, Hyun-woo replied and cut the transmission. In the silence that followed, Lieutenant Tae-min started laughing. Then Sergeant Ji-hai joined in. Soon the entire bridge crew was laughing. They had just told the Galactic Empire to go to hell, and it felt wonderful. Coordinator Velthak stared at the blank communication screen for a full minute. In his 300 years of service to the Galactic Empire, no species had ever simply said no to the integration protocols. It was impossible. The protocols were perfect. They had worked on every single species the Empire had encountered. He turned to his cultural analysis team. Explain this response. Sub-Coordinator Threndal, whose species had been integrated 2 centuries ago, checked his data. Files. Sir, perhaps there was a translation error. The human response was very brief. Only 1 word. The translation was correct, Velthak said. They refused. They simply refused. But that's not possible, another analyst said. The protocols account for every type of civilization. Warrior cultures always submit when shown superior force. Peaceful cultures submit immediately. Trade-focused cultures negotiate but ultimately comply. These humans fit the warrior culture pattern, but they're behaving incorrectly. Dr. Minho had been listening to these conversations through the translation link that Earth had secretly maintained. He was one of the few humans who had learned to speak several alien languages during his years of deep space research. The Empire didn't know he could understand them. What he heard made him smile. The aliens were genuinely confused. Their entire system was based on the idea that all species would eventually submit to superior technology and bureaucratic pressure. The concept of a species that would just refuse hadn't been programmed into their thinking. On the Empire ship, Velthak called an emergency meeting. Representatives from a dozen different alien species appeared on his communication screen. These were the Empire's best cultural experts, beings who had helped integrate hundreds of worlds. "We have a problem," Velthak announced. "The humans have refused the protocols." A collective gasp went around the virtual meeting room. Advisor Kelton, a spider-like creature from the Rigel system, spoke first. "Impossible. All species accept the protocols eventually. Perhaps they need more time to understand the benefits of integration." "Or more pressure," suggested General Morvac, whose people had been warriors before their integration. "Deploy the enforcement fleet. Show them our strength." "Wait," said Dr. Yathara, the Empire's chief xenopsychologist. "Let me study their response patterns first. Send them additional documentation. Explain the protocols more thoroughly." Velthak approved this plan. Within hours, the human communication networks were flooded with more alien paperwork. Form 88C. Reasons for compliance with Imperial integration. Addendum 12J. Consequences of refusal to accept Imperial authority. A 200-page flowchart explaining the proper procedures for planetary surrender. Admiral So-Min watched, the new documents flooding in, and started laughing. "They think we didn't understand the first time. They're sending us more paperwork." Captain Do Yan, commander of the Earth frigate Incheon's Pride, read through some of the new documents. "Look at this one. It's a guide for proper submission etiquette. They have rules for how we're supposed to surrender." The documents were remarkable in their detail. There were specific positions that human leaders were supposed to stand in during surrender ceremonies, scripts for speeches accepting Imperial authority, even guidelines for how human flags should be folded and stored after being replaced with Imperial banners. "They've really thought this through," observed Colonel Dong-hyun of the Marine Space Corps. "They have procedures for everything. Look, there's a form for requesting permission to keep family pets after integration." Dr. Minho was studying the aliens' cultural analysis files that he had managed to access. What he found was disturbing. The Empire had a detailed psychological profile of humanity based on observation from distant space. According to their files, humans were classified as a Type 7 warrior culture with moderate technological development. The analysis predicted that humans would display initial resistance followed by rapid compliance when faced with overwhelming technological superiority. The aliens had studied human history, but they had misunderstood it completely. They saw the wars, the conflicts, the competition between nations, and concluded that humans were like the other warrior species they had conquered. They expected humans to fight briefly, realize they were outmatched, and then submit to superior authority. They had no idea what they were really dealing with. Captain Do-yan decided to give the aliens a more personal response. She took her ship, The Inchan's Pride out to meet the alien vessel. It was a small frigate, barely 200 meters long, approaching a 3-kilometer alien ship. The size difference was ridiculous. Alien vessel, this is Captain Doyon of the Earthship Inchan's Pride. I'm here to discuss your protocols. Coordinator Velthak appeared on her screen. Excellent. You wish to begin the compliance process. Not exactly, Doyon said. I want to show you something. She held up one of the alien documents, a thick stack of papers that had been printed out from their electronic files. It was the Integration Timeline and Compliance Schedule, 47 pages of bureaucratic instructions. This is what you sent us, she said. Then, while Velthak watched, she tore the document in half, then in half again, then again, until she had a pile of confetti floating around her in the ship's low gravity. This is what we think of your protocols, she announced. You can take your integration schedule and file it in the waste recycling system. The alien's face went through several color changes. This is highly irregular. The protocols must be respected. Must they? Doyon asked. Says who? Says the Galactic Empire. We have authority over this sector of space. Did we vote on that? I don't remember anyone asking us if we wanted to be part of your empire. Velthak's voice became strained. The empire does not require permission. We are bringing order and civilization to primitive worlds. Doyon started laughing. Primitive! We're primitive! You want to know what's primitive? Sending 47,000 pages of paperwork and expecting people to just roll over and obey. That's not civilized. That's just bullying with extra steps. The communication ended abruptly. Doyon could imagine the alien frantically checking his protocols for response to document destruction or procedures when primitives mock imperial authority. Back on the Empire ship, Velthak was indeed checking his files. Nowhere in the vast database of integration procedures was there a protocol for dealing with beings who simply laughed at imperial authority. He called Dr. Yithara again. The humans destroyed our documentation. They called our methods primitive. Impossible. The protocols represent thousands of years of refined civilization. That's what I told them. They laughed. Dr. Yithara was quiet for a moment. Send them more documentation. Explain the consequences of non-compliance. Surely they'll understand when they see what happens to species that refuse integration. More files flooded Earth's communication systems. Historical records of other species that had resisted the Empire, before and after pictures of planets that had been pacified. Statistical analyses showing the benefits of imperial citizenship. Lieutenant G1, Earth's top cyber warfare specialist, had been studying the alien communication protocols. She discovered something interesting. The aliens expected responses to their forms. Their system was designed to process feedback, complaints, and questions about the integration procedures, so she started responding. To the planetary resource inventory request, she submitted a detailed list that included 1 barrel of human stubbornness, 47 metric tons of concentrated sass, and an unlimited supply of creative profanity. To the cultural integration assessment form, she wrote an essay about how human culture could be improved by teaching aliens to recognize sarcasm. To the compliance timeline verification, she submitted a schedule that had humans surrendering, sometime between the heat death of the universe and never. The alien computers, designed to process serious bureaucratic responses, began having problems. Error messages started appearing in their systems. The neat, orderly flow of imperial paperwork ground to a halt as the computers tried to categorize things like weaponized stubbornness and tactical sarcasm. Dr. Minho watched the alien confusion with growing amusement. They had built their entire system around the assumption that everyone would play by their rules. They had never encountered a species that would respond to their carefully crafted bureaucracy with deliberate nonsense. Colonel Dong Hyun decided to escalate things. When the aliens sent Form 447B requesting Earth's official surrender timeline, he responded by transmitting humanity's entire collection of war movies. The files included everything from ancient films about Roman gladiators to modern space battle movies. He attached a simple note. "This is our timeline. This is what we do. Are you sure you want to continue?" The Alien Cultural Analysis team spent days trying to understand the movies. They saw humans fighting impossible odds and refusing to surrender. They saw stories about small groups defeating vast empires through courage and determination. They saw people choosing death over slavery again and again, but they still didn't understand. To them, these were just primitive entertainment files. They didn't realize they were looking at humanity's instruction manual. High Bureaucrat Morgoth arrived with Administrative Enforcement Fleet Sigma-7 exactly 1 week after humans had started sending joke responses to Imperial forms. His ship, the Regulatory Compliance, was even larger than Velthak's vessel, and it brought 12 support ships filled with the Empire's most advanced bureaucratic weapons. Morgoth was a legend in Imperial circles. He had personally overseen the integration of 43 species using nothing but paperwork and administrative pressure. His methods were considered works of art by other bureaucrats. "The problem," Morgoth announced to the assembled fleet, "Commanders, is that these humans don't understand the seriousness of their situation. They think this is some kind of game." He reviewed the human responses that had been flooding their systems. The joke inventories, the sarcastic essays, the war movies. To Morgoth, these were clear signs of a species that had never faced real administrative power. "Deploy Administrative Lock Protocol 12, he ordered. What happened next was unprecedented in galactic history. The Empire began broadcasting a continuous stream of forms, regulations, and compliance documents directly into Earth's communication networks. Not just to government offices, but everywhere. Every computer, every phone, every communication device on Earth started receiving alien paperwork. The forms were generated by the Empire's most advanced artificial intelligence systems. They could create millions of unique documents per second, each one technically different, but requiring human responses. Forms for licensing pet ownership under Imperial law. Applications for permission to grow food in specific soil types. Requests for detailed information about every human relationship, every job, every thought that might be relevant to Imperial governance. Engineer Tae Yang watched from Seoul Command Center as Earth's internet infrastructure began groaning under the weight. "They're trying to drown us in paperwork," he reported to Admiral So-min. "Our servers are filling up with their forms faster than we can delete them." The aliens had calculated that humans would be forced to respond to the forms or risk having their communication systems completely overwhelmed. In their experience, species faced with this level of bureaucratic pressure always capitulated within hours. They were wrong. Lieutenant Ji-won looked at the flood of incoming forms and smiled. "They want to play the paperwork game? Let's show them how it's done." She assembled a team of Earth's best hackers, programmers, and creative writers. Their mission was simple: respond to every single alien form with the most ridiculous, absurd, and nonsensical answers possible. The team worked in shifts around the clock. When the aliens sent a form requesting detailed information about human reproduction cycles, the response included a 40-page essay about how humans reproduced through interpretive dance. When they asked for geological surveys, they received reports about rocks with feelings and soil that enjoyed classical music. The Empire's computers, designed to process logical bureaucratic responses, began experiencing what could only be described as digital nervous breakdowns. The alien artificial intelligence systems started generating error reports about impossible data inputs and responses that violate the laws of bureaucratic physics. But the humans were just getting started. Colonel Dong-hyun discovered something interesting about the alien forms. They had to be processed in order. The Empire's system was designed to handle each response before generating the next form. If you could slow down the processing, you could slow down the entire system. So Earth began sending responses that required maximum processing time. Answers that included mathematical proofs that 2 plus 2 equaled fish. Philosophical essays about the sound of one hand filing paperwork. Poetry written in languages that didn't exist. The alien computers spent hours trying to categorize and file each response according to imperial regulations. Their entire administrative system began backing up like a clogged drain. Captain Do-Yan watched the alien ships from her position near Luna Station. "They're not moving," she reported. "Just sitting there transmitting forms." "Because that's all they know how to do," Admiral So-Min replied. "Look at their military records. They've never actually fought a war. They just overwhelm species with bureaucracy until they surrender." Dr. Min-Ho had been studying the Empire's historical files. What he found was remarkable. In 50,000 years of expansion, the Galactic Empire had never encountered serious military resistance. Every species they had contacted had eventually submitted to administrative pressure. The Empire's military was designed for intimidation, not combat. Their massive ships were impressive to look at, but they were primarily flying government offices. Most of their weapon systems were actually document printers and communication arrays designed to deliver paperwork at long range. "They're not warriors," Min-Ho explained to the assembled Earth commanders. "They're accountants with starships." This gave Captain Jae-hyun an idea. His ship, the converted mining vessel Busan's Hammer, wasn't much to look at, but it was built to survive the harsh conditions of asteroid mining. More importantly, it was equipped with industrial-grade cutting tools and explosive charges. "Admiral," he said, "request permission to conduct a field test." "What kind of field test?" Jae-hyun grinned. "I want to see what happens when you bring a mining ship to a paperwork fight." The Busan's Hammer approached the nearest alien vessel, broadcasting a simple message. "We're here to discuss your forms." The alien captain, Sub-Coordinator Threndal, was delighted. Finally, the humans were showing proper respect for Imperial procedures. "Excellent," he replied. "Please prepare to receive Compliance Verification Forms 2001 through 2847. "Actually," Jae-hyun said, "we prefer face-to-face meetings." Before the alien could respond, the Busan's Hammer accelerated to ramming speed. The mining ship's reinforced hull, designed to survive collisions with asteroids, smashed through the alien vessel's outer armor like it was made of paper. The aliens had energy shields, but they were designed to stop weapons, not mining equipment. They had never encountered a species crazy enough to ram a government vessel with industrial machinery. Jae-hyun's crew poured through the breach wearing mining suits and carrying cutting tools. The aliens, who had never seen actual combat, panicked completely. Most of them fled to their escape pods, abandoning the ship. Within an hour, Earth had captured its first alien vessel. The other alien ships in the fleet immediately began broadcasting emergency protocols. But their emergency procedures were naturally more paperwork. Forms for reporting unexpected resistance, applications for additional administrative support, requests for guidance on dealing with non-compliant primitives. Pilot Yuna was leading a squadron of modified atmospheric fighters when she heard about Jae-hyun's success. Her ships weren't designed for space combat, but they were fast and maneuverable, and they had been equipped with mining charges. If mining ships can take alien cruisers, she told her squadron. Let's see what fighters can do. The atmospheric fighters weren't supposed to work in space, but human engineers had never been too concerned about what was supposed to work. They had added life support systems, reaction mass tanks, and whatever weapons they could bolt onto, the frames. Yun-Ah's squadron hit the alien flagship while it was still trying to process the loss of the first ship. Her fighters swarmed around the massive vessel like angry wasps, attaching mining charges to critical systems. The alien captain tried to contact her. "This is highly irregular. You must follow proper engagement protocols." "What protocols?" Yun-Ah. replied as her charges detonated across the ship's communication arrays. You never sent us the forms for those. The Empire's energy shields were sophisticated pieces of technology designed to stop advanced energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. They were not designed to stop humans who had strapped explosives to atmospheric fighters and were using them as guided missiles. 3 more alien ships were disabled within hours. High Bureaucrat Morgoth watched his fleet falling apart and felt something he had never experienced before: panic. His administrative weapons were useless. His bureaucratic procedures had been turned into a joke. His impressive fleet was being destroyed by primitive humans using mining equipment. He opened a communication channel to Earth's military command. Admiral So-Min appeared on his screen, and she was smiling. I believe you wanted to discuss our compliance with your protocols, she said. This is unacceptable, Morgoth sputtered. You're not following proper procedures. There are forms for military engagement, protocols for surrender negotiations. Admiral So-Min's smile grew wider. You know what? You're right. We should follow proper procedures. She held up a single sheet of paper. This is Earth's official response to your integration protocols, she said. Then she tore the paper in half. There, we followed your procedures. We filed our response in the appropriate location. She pointed to a wastebasket. Now, Admiral So-Min continued, let me explain our procedures. First, you leave our solar system. Second, you don't come back. Third, you tell your empire that Earth is off limits. Any questions? Morgoth's face had turned several interesting colors during this speech. The Empire will not tolerate this resistance. We have procedures for dealing with non-compliant species. The Empire's response to their bureaucratic failure was predictable. They escalated to Protocol 891, demonstrate superior force. Within days, a massive Imperial battle fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. 12 dreadnoughts, each 5 kilometers long, accompanied by 40 cruisers and hundreds of support vessels. Fleet Admiral Korthak, commander of the Imperial 3rd Battle Group, had never lost the engagement. His ships had broken the resistance of 17 different species through overwhelming displays of firepower. The mere sight of his fleet was usually enough to convince rebellious planets to surrender immediately. He positioned his dreadnoughts around Earth's major cities: New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, São Paulo, Lagos. The massive ships hung in the sky like metal moons, their weapon systems clearly visible to everyone below. The message was simple: submit, or your cities burn. Admiral Korthak opened a communication channel to Earth's government. I am Fleet Admiral Korthak of the Imperial Navy. You have 1 hour to begin compliance with integration protocols. If you refuse, we will begin pacification bombardment of your population centers. Admiral So-Min appeared on his screen. Behind her, Korthak could see the Earth Military Command Center. It was smaller than his personal quarters, and the technology looked primitive compared to Imperial standards. These humans were clearly outmatched. 1 hour? So-Min asked. That's not very long. It is sufficient time to surrender, Korthak replied. The Empire offers mercy to those who submit quickly. So-Min nodded thoughtfully. I see. And what happens if we don't surrender? Your cities will be reduced to rubble. Your military will be destroyed. Your population will be relocated to serve the Empire. This is the fate of all who resist Imperial authority. Has this always worked before? Korthak was surprised by the question. Of course. No species has ever continued resistance after seeing Imperial battle fleet. So-Min smiled, and Korthak felt a strange chill. There was something unsettling about that smile. It reminded him of predators from his home world. the kind that smiled just before they attacked. "Well," So Min said, "I guess it's time you met humans." She turned to address someone off-screen. "Begin Operation Stubborn." Across Earth, military commanders received their orders. What happened next would be studied in war colleges across the galaxy for centuries to come, though most of those colleges would conclude that the human response was impossible and the records must be falsified. Captain Jae-hyun was the first to respond. His converted mining ship, Busan's Hammer, had been refitted with nuclear charges in place of its ore processing equipment. It accelerated directly toward the dreadnought hovering over Seoul. "This is insane," his engineer, Seok Min, pointed out. "That ship is 50 times our size." "Size doesn't matter," Jae-hyun replied. "They're bureaucrats with big ships. We're miners with explosives. Guess who knows more about breaking things?" The Imperial Dreadnought Regulatory Supremacy detected the approaching mining ship and tried to warn it off. "Primitive vessel, alter course immediately, or you will be destroyed." Jae-hyun's response became legendary. "You brought paperwork to a knife fight." The Dreadnought's energy shields activated, designed to stop the most advanced weapons known to the Empire. They were not designed to stop a mining ship loaded with nuclear explosives and piloted by someone who had spent years ramming asteroids at high velocity. The Busan's Hammer hit the shield at full acceleration. For a moment, the energy barrier held. Then the nuclear charges detonated, and the shield collapsed like a soap bubble. The mining ship was vaporized in the explosion, but its sacrifice opened a hole in the Dreadnought's defenses. Through that hole came something the Empire had never seen before, a wave of human fighters that had been hiding behind Earth's moon. Pilot Yoon-ah led the assault. Her squadron was flying converted atmospheric fighters that shouldn't have been, able to operate in space. Each fighter had been stripped down to essentials and loaded with every explosive device the pilots could carry. "Remember," she told her squadron, "they expect us to fight like they're other enemies. They expect logical tactics and proper military procedures. They don't expect us to be completely insane." The Imperial Point defense systems tried to target the incoming fighters, but they were programmed to track proper military spacecraft following predictable flight patterns. Yuna's fighters were flying like drunk butterflies, spinning and diving in patterns that made no tactical sense, but somehow avoided most of the incoming fire. When her squadron reached the Dreadnought, they didn't try to fight it conventionally. Instead, they rammed it. Dozens of fighters loaded with explosives smashed into the massive ship's hull, each one detonating on impact. The regulatory supremacy began to list as explosions rippled across its structure. Its crew, trained for proper fleet engagements, had no idea how to respond to an enemy that used suicide attacks as an opening move. Admiral Korthak watched in horror as his flagship was crippled by primitive fighters. "This is impossible. They're destroying themselves to hurt us." Around Earth, similar scenes were playing out. Human forces were attacking the Imperial fleet with weapons that shouldn't work, tactics that made no sense, and a complete disregard for their own safety. Above Mumbai, Commander Wu Bin led a boarding assault using converted construction mechs. The massive industrial machines were designed for building skyscrapers, but they turned out to be excellent for tearing through spaceship hulls. "Remember," Wu Bin told his team as they approached the Dreadnought Administrative Order, "if it's not supposed to explode, we'll make it explode." The Imperial Marines who tried to repel the boarding assault found themselves fighting construction workers in powered armor who treated spaceship corridors like building sites. The humans used cutting torches as weapons, welding equipment as shields, and explosive charges with the casual expertise of people who demolished buildings for a living. The alien Marines, trained for proper military combat, were completely unprepared for enemies who fought like they were renovating a particularly stubborn house. In orbit above Lagos, Dr. Yunji was conducting the most ridiculous experiment in military history. She had convinced Earth's leaders to let her test something called the uncertainty cannon, a weapon built from modified particle accelerators. The device worked by bombarding enemy targeting computers with quantum particles in superposition, causing the alien systems to become uncertain about whether they were actually being attacked or not. It was the kind of weapon that could only be invented by a species that thought the laws of physics were more like guidelines. The Imperial cruiser Procedural Compliance found itself unable to fire its weapons because its computers couldn't decide whether the approaching human ships actually existed. The targeting systems kept displaying error messages like target status, probably real, and firing solution, mathematically questionable. By the time the alien crew figured out what was happening, human fighters had attached magnetic mines to their hull and were politely requesting their surrender. Fleet Admiral Korthak tried to rally his forces, but his fleet was falling apart. Half his ships were damaged or destroyed, and the other half were dealing with human forces that seemed to operate by completely different rules than anything in Imperial military doctrine. His communication officer brought him a report that made his head hurt. "Sir, the humans have captured the dreadnought bureaucratic excellence by filling it with confetti." "Confetti?" "Yes, sir. They loaded their missiles with shredded paper instead of explosives. The confetti clogged our air filtration systems, and our crew had to evacuate. The humans then boarded the ship and they're making paper airplanes in the command center." Korthak stared at the report. In 300 years of military service, he had never received a sentence containing the words captured, confetti, and paper airplanes. Captain Hyun-woo contacted the Imperial fleet from Luna Station. "Admiral Korthak, this is Captain Hyun-woo. We'd like to discuss terms." "Terms?" Korthak was grateful for something that sounded like normal military procedure. "You wish to negotiate your surrender?" "Not exactly," Hyun-woo replied. "We want to know if you'd like to surrender to us." "Impossible. The Imperial Navy does not surrender to primitives. Then we'll keep destroying your ships until you change your mind." Korthak looked at his tactical display. Half his fleet was gone. The other half was being systematically dismantled by humans using mining equipment, construction tools, and weapons that violated several laws of physics. "This is not how warfare is conducted," he protested. "You're right," Hyun-woo agreed. "This is how humans fight. There's a difference." On the main screen, Korthak could see Earth hanging in space, blue and peaceful. It looked so small compared to his massive ships. But somehow, that small planet was winning. "Your species is insane," Korthak said quietly. "Thank you," Hyun-woo replied. "We work hard at it." As if to prove his point, another human fighter squadron attacked the dreadnought Imperial Authority by ramming it with ships loaded with nothing but paint. The massive warship was now bright pink and completely unable to see through its viewing ports. The Empire's military leaders held an emergency meeting in the safety of hyperspace, well away from the dangerous humans. Fleet Admiral Korthak's report was received in stunned silence by the Imperial High Command. "They destroyed half my fleet, using mining equipment," Korthak repeated for the third time. "One of my dreadnoughts was captured by construction workers. Another was disabled by fighters loaded with confetti. They have a weapon that makes our computers question reality." "Supreme Commander Vorthak, the Empire's highest military authority, studied the battle reports with growing disbelief. "This is impossible. Our forces are equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. How can primitives with chemical rockets pose any threat?" "Because they don't fight like anyone else," Korthak explained. "They use kamikaze attacks as standard tactics. They turn civilian equipment into weapons. They ram our ships with mining vessels. They fight like every battle is their last battle." Dr. Yithara, the Empire's chief xenopsychologist, had been analyzing human behavior patterns. "I believe the problem is that we fundamentally misunderstood their species classification. We labeled them as a warrior culture, but that was incorrect." "Then what are they?" Vorthak demanded. "They're not warriors," Dr. Yithara said slowly. "Warriors fight according to codes of honor. Warriors have rules and traditions and proper procedures. These humans, they're something else entirely." On Earth, the celebration was already in full swing. Humans had done the impossible. They had defeated a galactic superpower using nothing but mining equipment, civilian spacecraft, and an absolute refusal to follow anyone else's rules. Admiral So Min stood in the command center looking at the tactical display showing the wreckage of the Imperial fleet. Half the alien ships were destroyed, and the other half had retreated to what they considered a safe distance. "Status report," she ordered. Commander Seok Jin, who had been coordinating the orbital defense platforms, looked up from his console. "Ma'am, we've successfully converted 17 asteroid mining platforms into kinetic artillery. We're currently using them to throw rocks at any alien ship that gets too close." "Rocks?" "Very fast rocks, ma'am. Turns out that if you accelerate a 10-ton asteroid to a significant fraction of light speed, it doesn't matter how advanced their shields are." Nei Young, the engineering team leader, was grinning as she delivered her report. "We've weaponized everything we can get our hands on. Construction mechs, mining ships, cargo haulers, even some of the old orbital garbage collection systems. If it can move in space, we've figured out how to blow something up with it." The human approach to warfare was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While other species developed dedicated military technology, humans had simply taken whatever they had lying around and turned it into weapons. Satellite communication arrays became long-range sensors. Asteroid mining charges became ship-killing missiles. Construction platforms became orbital fortresses. Even the space-based solar collectors had been modified to focus energy beams on enemy ships. Sergeant Wubin, fresh from his successful boarding action, was already planning the next assault. "Ma'am, request permission to take a team to the alien ships that are still functional. I want to see if we can figure out how their technology works." "Are you planning to capture more ships using construction equipment?" Admiral So Min asked. "Actually, I was thinking of using the garbage collection mechs this time. They have really good grabbing claws." The aliens monitoring human communications were horrified by these conversations. The humans talked about interstellar warfare like it was a particularly challenging construction project. They discussed capturing advanced starships the way other species might talk about repairing a broken appliance. Dr. Yunji had been studying the captured alien technology, and her discoveries were remarkable. "Admiral, their weapons are incredibly sophisticated, but they're designed for very specific types of combat. Energy shields that stop directed energy weapons, point defense systems that target incoming missiles, electronic countermeasures for advanced guidance systems." "But," So Min prompted, "but they have no defense against someone who rams them with a mining ship." Their shields can stop an antimatter torpedo, but they can't handle a human in a construction mech with a welding torch. Their computer systems are immune to the most advanced viruses, but they crash when you feed them nonsense data about rocks with feelings. This was the heart of humanity's advantage. The Empire had spent thousands of years perfecting their technology to fight other advanced civilizations. They had weapons and defenses for every conceivable military threat. But they had never imagined fighting a species that would use industrial equipment as weapons of war. Captain Kyung-soo was leading the next wave of human attacks. His ship, the converted cargo hauler Seoul's Defiance, was approaching one of the remaining Imperial cruisers. The alien ship, Compliance Enforcement, was maintaining what it considered a safe distance from Earth. "Alien vessel," Kyung-soo broadcast. "This is the Earth ship Seoul's Defiance. We challenge you to single combat." The alien captain, Commander Vextar, was confused by the transmission. "Single combat? This is not a recognized military procedure." "It's a human tradition," Kyung-soo explained. "Your best warrior against ours. Winner takes the ship." Commander Vextar consulted his military databases. There was no protocol for this situation, but the challenge seemed to follow ancient warrior traditions that his people had studied. Perhaps the humans were finally ready to behave in a civilized manner. "Very well," Vextar replied. "I accept your challenge. I will meet your champion in honorable combat." What Vextar expected was a formal duel with traditional weapons, following proper rules of engagement. What he got was Captain Kyung-soo showing up in a powered exoskeleton built from construction equipment, wielding a plasma cutter as a sword. "This violates all honor protocols," Vextar protested, as Kyung-soo's improvised armor shrugged off his ceremonial weapons. "You invaded us with paperwork," Kyung-soo replied, advancing with his makeshift plasma sword. "We don't do honor protocols." The duel was over in minutes. Vextar surrendered when he realized that his opponent was wearing armor designed to survive industrial accidents and was armed with tools meant for cutting through starship hulls. "Your champion fights without honor," Vextar complained, as Kyung-soo's boarding teams took control of his ship. "Our champion fights to win," Kyung-soo corrected. "There's a difference." Meanwhile, Captain Hae-won was conducting what would become known as the Laughter Protocol. She had discovered that broadcasting recordings of humans laughing was having a devastating effect on alien morale. It wasn't just any laughter. It was the deep, genuine laughter of people who found the entire situation absurd. The laughter of a species that had been told to surrender by aliens with impressive technology and had responded by hitting them with mining equipment. The sound was being broadcast across all Imperial frequencies, and it was driving the aliens to distraction. They had been trained to deal with fear, anger, desperation, even madness. But they had no protocols for dealing with an enemy that found them hilarious. "Turn off that transmission," Fleet Admiral Korthak ordered. "We can't, sir," his communication officer replied. "They're broadcasting it on every frequency we use. And, sir, some of our crew are starting to laugh, too." This was true. The alien crews, stressed by their impossible situation and exhausted by fighting an enemy that made no sense, were beginning to succumb to hysteria. The laughter was contagious, and soon entire ships were filled with aliens giggling uncontrollably. Dr. Minho, monitoring the alien communications, reported this development to Admiral So-min with barely contained amusement. "Ma'am, we're winning a psychological warfare campaign by accident. The aliens are having nervous breakdowns because we think this is funny." "Is it funny?" So-min asked. "Ma'am, they sent us 47,000 pages of paperwork and expected us to surrender." Then they sent bigger ships and more paperwork. Now they're losing a war to construction workers and garbage collectors. It's the funniest thing that's ever happened. Admiral Somin considered this. You know what? You're right. It is funny. She opened a communication channel to the remaining Imperial ships. Attention, Imperial Fleet. This is Admiral Somin of Earth Defense Command. We've been thinking about your integration protocols, and we've decided they're hilarious. Would you like to hear our counter-proposal? Fleet Admiral Korthak, desperate for any sign that the humans might be ready to negotiate reasonably, accepted. The transmission. Admiral Somin appeared on his screen, and she was smiling, that predatory human smile that had become the stuff of alien nightmares. Here's our counter-proposal, she said. You leave. You don't come back. You tell your empire that Earth is off-limits, and in return, we won't chase you across the galaxy with mining ships. The transmission ended with the sound of human laughter echoing across space. Korthak stared at the blank screen and realized that his mighty fleet had been defeated by a species that treated interstellar warfare as a comedy show. And the worst part was, they were right. It was funny. 6 months had passed since the first Imperial fleet had retreated from Earth, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that something unprecedented had happened. The Galactic Empire, which had conquered star systems for 50,000 years, without a single defeat, had been stopped by one small planet. The news spread through hyperspace communication networks faster than the Empire could suppress it. Species that had been conquered generations ago whispered about the humans who had laughed at Imperial authority and won. Trade routes buzzed with rumors about mining ships that could destroy dreadnoughts and construction workers who captured warships. On the Imperial capital world of Centrix Prime, emergency session 44-7-1 of the High Council was in progress. Supreme. Overlord Maltheus presided over a gathering of the Empire's most powerful beings, and none of them had answers for the human problem. Explain to me again, Maltheus said in his carefully controlled voice, how a single primitive world has destroyed 3 of our fleets. Fleet Admiral Korthak, his military career effectively over, stood before the council. Supreme Overlord, the humans do not fight according to any known military doctrine. They use civilian equipment as weapons. They employ suicide tactics as opening moves. They treat warfare as entertainment. You are telling me that our advanced military was defeated by entertainers? No, my lord. We were defeated by a species that refuses to acknowledge our superiority. They don't fear our technology because they don't understand why they should. They see our dreadnoughts and think, big target. They receive our ultimatums and laugh. Dr. Yathara had completed her extensive psychological analysis of humanity. Her report was 17 pages long, which was remarkably brief by Imperial standards, but still contained conclusions that shocked the council. My lords, she began, the humans represent something we have never encountered before. Every species we have integrated has been either primarily peaceful or primarily warlike. The humans are both simultaneously. Impossible, declared General Morketh. A species cannot be peaceful and warlike at the same time. The humans prove otherwise. They are capable of incredible cooperation and creativity when working together. But when threatened, they become individually dangerous in ways our models cannot predict. Each human seems to possess the survival instincts of a solitary predator combined with the pack loyalty of a social species. Administrator Velnoth raised a tentacle. Perhaps we are approaching this incorrectly. Could we not simply destroy their planet from a safe distance? The council fell silent. They all knew the answer to that question. We could, Maltheus admitted slowly, but the humans have made it clear that they possess interstellar capabilities. If we destroy Earth, the survivors will spread across the galaxy, and based on what we have observed, angry humans would be significantly more dangerous than the ones who were merely defending their home. This was the Empire's real nightmare. They had studied human history during the conflict, and what they found had terrified their military analysts. Humans had a documented tendency to become more dangerous when they were displaced or scattered. Their entire historical pattern showed that survivors of disasters often became explorers, conquerors, or revolutionaries. "We have another problem," reported Intelligence Coordinator Thexvale. "Other species are beginning to resist integration. The Rigelian Trade Federation has refused to renew their compliance agreements. The Andorian Mining Collective has stopped responding to our communications entirely. Word of human resistance is spreading." This was what the Empire had feared most. For 50,000 years, their power had been based on the assumption that resistance was impossible. Every species in the galaxy knew that the Empire always won, so they surrendered rather than fight hopeless wars. But now everyone knew that the Empire could be beaten. The humans had proved it was possible. On Earth, Admiral So Min was holding a very different kind of meeting. Representatives from 12 different alien species had requested secret communications with humanity. These were not Empire representatives, but delegates from worlds that had been integrated decades or centuries ago. The first to speak was Ambassador Kelleth of the Rigelian Trade Federation. His species looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large eyes. "Admiral So Min," he said formally, "my people have watched your resistance with great interest. We wish to know if humans would be willing to share their techniques." "You want to know how to fight the Empire?" "We want to know how to say no to them," Kelleth clarified. "For 300 years, we have been compliant members of the Imperial community. We followed their regulations, paid their taxes, allowed them to dictate our trade policies. But after seeing your example, we have begun to ask ourselves, why?" Admiral So Min smiled. "The answer is simple. You say no because you can. They can't actually force you to cooperate if you're willing to accept the consequences of resistance. But their military power is designed to intimidate, not fight. Look at their ships. They're impressive, but they're built for show. Their weapons are powerful, but they're designed to destroy planets from a distance, not fight determined resistance. Their whole system depends on people being afraid to resist." Ambassador Nereth of the Andorian Mining Collective spoke next. "Her species resembled human-sized insects with metallic exoskeletons. Our people are miners, like many of yours seem to be," she said. "Perhaps we could learn from your techniques." "What would you like to know?" "How did you turn mining equipment into weapons?" Admiral So Min laughed. "We didn't turn mining equipment into weapons. Mining equipment is weapons. You just have to use it on the right targets." She called up technical displays showing human A modifications to standard mining gear. Rock cutters work on spaceship hulls. Ore haulers can ram enemy ships. Explosive charges don't care if they're used on asteroids or dreadnoughts. We just stopped thinking of them as separate categories. The alien representatives studied the information with growing excitement. These were all techniques that their own people could use immediately. Commander Thok of the Centauri Defense Corps was particularly interested in human tactical doctrine. "Your species seems to excel at improvisation. How do you train for situations you have never encountered before?" General In-Ho, scarred from the Battle of Luna, answered this one. "We don't train for specific situations. We train people to think. Every human soldier knows that the plan will fail, the equipment will break, and the enemy will do something unexpected, so we teach them to solve problems, not follow procedures. This seems chaotic. It is chaotic. That's the point. If your enemy can't predict what you're going to do, they can't plan a defense against it. Inho pulled up recordings from the recent battles. Look at this engagement. The Empire's computers calculated that our fighters would approach from the optimal attack vector, maintain proper formation, and attempt to penetrate their defensive perimeter using standard tactics. Instead, our pilots flew in random patterns, ignored their own safety, and attacked with weapons that weren't supposed to work in space. Your people accept very high casualty rates, observed Ambassador Kelleth. When we're defending our homes? Yes, but the Empire made a mistake. They thought that showing us their superior firepower would make us surrender to avoid casualties. They didn't understand that threatening our families just makes us more dangerous. Dr. Minho had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he spoke up. The real secret isn't our tactics or our weapons. It's our attitude. The Empire sent us forms and expected us to fill them out. They sent us ultimatums and expected us to comply. They told us we had to surrender, and we asked why. But surely their superior technology. Their technology is impressive, Minho agreed, but it's designed by people who think there's only one way to do things. They build energy shields that stop energy weapons, so we hit them with rocks. They create point defense systems that shoot down missiles, so we ram them with manned spacecraft. They develop computers that can outsmart any artificial intelligence, so we feed them nonsense until they break. The alien representatives were taking extensive notes. This was exactly what they had hoped to learn. The key, Admiral Somin concluded, is to stop accepting their assumptions. They assume that their technology makes them superior. They assume that their size makes them intimidating. They assume that their bureaucracy makes them legitimate. Once you stop accepting those assumptions, they become just another problem to solve. As the meeting ended, Ambassador Kelleth asked one final question. Admiral, if other species begin to resist the Empire, will humans provide assistance? So Min considered this carefully. We won't fight your wars for you. But if you want to learn how to fight your own wars, we're happy to teach you. The galaxy is big enough for everyone to be free. After the alien representatives departed, General Inho turned to Admiral So Min. Ma'am, do you think they'll actually do it? Start resisting? So Min looked out at the stars where human ships now patrolled alongside captured Imperial vessels. Some will, others won't. But the important thing is that now they know it's possible. The Empire isn't going to like this. 1 year after the first Imperial contact, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Galactic Empire, which had ruled unchallenged for millennia, was now struggling to maintain control over its vast territories as resistance. Movements spread from system to system. The Rigelian Trade Federation had been the first to formally withdraw from imperial oversight. Their announcement was simple. After careful consideration, we have decided to manage our own affairs. When the Empire sent enforcement fleets, they found that the Rigelians had learned human tactics well. Mining ships loaded with explosives, converted cargo haulers armed with industrial cutting tools, and a complete refusal to fight by imperial rules. The Andorian Mining Collective followed suit, using techniques taught by human engineers to turn their mining equipment into formidable weapons. Other species began questioning why they needed imperial protection and guidance. On Earth, Captain Hyunwoo now commanded a very different kind of ship. The captured Imperial dreadnought had been renamed Soul's Revenge and retrofitted with human technology. It was a strange hybrid. Alien energy shields protecting human-built mining equipment, Imperial computers running software that specialized in creative problem-solving. Status report, Admiral Soman requested during their weekly command briefing. Ma'am, we now have 17 captured Imperial vessels in service, reported Fleet Captain Do-Yon. Our engineering teams have successfully integrated human technology with alien systems. The results are interesting. She pulled up technical displays showing the modifications. Imperial energy weapons had been connected to human industrial systems, creating tools that could cut through anything. Alien communication arrays had been reprogrammed to broadcast human entertainment across multiple star systems. Advanced Imperial sensors were being used to prospect for asteroids with unusual efficiency. The aliens built amazing tools, explained Chief Engineer Ne Young. They just never imagined using them the way we do. Their mining sensors are incredibly precise, but they only use them for surveying. We use them to target enemy weak points. Their communication systems can reach across the galaxy, but they only use them for official messages. We use them to coordinate surprise attacks. Captain Jae-hyun, now commanding the hybrid cruiser Busan's Thunder, had become something of a legend throughout human space. His ship was a perfect example of human engineering philosophy. If something worked, keep it. If it didn't work, fix it. If it couldn't be fixed, blow it up and build something better. Sir, he reported, we've completed our patrol of the outer system. We encountered 3 Imperial reconnaissance vessels. They withdrew immediately when they detected our approach. They didn't try to fight? No, ma'am. Apparently, word has spread through their fleet that engaging human ships is inadvisable. This was having an unexpected effect on Imperial morale. The mighty Imperial Navy, which had never known defeat, was now avoiding combat with converted mining ships and construction platforms. Their crews, trained for overwhelming technological superiority, were psychologically unprepared for enemies who fought with improvised weapons and tactics that changed with every engagement. Dr. Min Ho had been studying captured Imperial databases and had made some remarkable discoveries about the Empire's true nature. Admiral, he reported, I've been analyzing their governmental structure, and I think we've been misunderstanding what we're fighting. Explain. The Galactic Empire isn't really an empire in the traditional sense. It's more like a galaxy-spanning insurance company with delusions of grandeur. So Min blinked. Insurance company? Think about it. They don't conquer worlds through military force. They show up, present a bill for protection services, and threaten terrible consequences if the bill isn't paid. Then they provide minimal actual protection, while extracting maximum resources. It's a protection racket on an interstellar scale. This explained many things about Imperial behavior. Their massive ships were designed for intimidation rather than combat. Their bureaucratic procedures were meant to process compliance rather than govern effectively. Their entire system was built around the assumption that everyone would pay rather than fight. So what happens when someone stops paying? So Min asked. They send bigger bills and more threatening letters, but they're not actually equipped to handle real resistance, because their entire business model depends on no one ever calling their bluff. Captain Kyung-soo, fresh from another successful diplomatic mission that had resulted in 3 more captured Imperial ships, had insights from direct contact with alien crews. Ma'am, I've been talking to the prisoners from the cruiser administrative. Supremacy. They're scared, but not of dying in battle. They're scared of filing the wrong reports about their defeat. Explain. Their military culture is built around following procedures and avoiding blame. When we capture their ships, Their biggest concern is whether their failure reports will be processed correctly by Imperial bureaucracy. They're more afraid of their own paperwork than they are of us. This psychological insight had led to a new human tactic: bureaucratic warfare. Instead of simply destroying Imperial ships, human forces had started capturing them and then releasing the crews with impossible paperwork to fill out. Lieutenant G1 had developed this into an art form. "Sir, when we captured the destroyer regulatory enforcement, I gave their captain a stack of forms to explain their defeat. Standard Imperial paperwork, but I modified it slightly." "How?" "Every form requires information from another form, but the forms are designed so that filling out one makes it impossible to fill out the others. The captain and his crew are still trying to complete the paperwork. They've been working on it for 3 weeks. Are they still functional as a military unit? They're too busy filling out forms to fight. Their entire crew has been paralyzed by administrative confusion." Meanwhile, the Empire was discovering that their traditional solutions to rebellion were completely inadequate when dealing with humans. Imperial Pacification Fleet 7 had been dispatched to restore order in human space. It was the largest fleet ever assembled by the Empire: 50 dreadnoughts, 200 cruisers, and over 1,000 support vessels. Fleet Commander Supreme Maltheus personally led the armada, determined to end the human problem once and for all. His plan was simple: demonstrate such overwhelming force that the humans would have no choice but to surrender. He hadn't learned anything from the previous failures. When the Imperial Armada arrived at the edge of the solar system, they found it apparently undefended. Earth's orbital platforms were empty, and there were no human ships visible on long-range sensors. "Where are they?" demanded Maltheus. "Unknown, sir," replied his sensor officer. "We're detecting no major military installations, no fleet concentrations, no defensive preparations." Maltheus was suspicious, but after 3 days of scanning, the Imperial fleet began moving toward Earth. Surely the humans had finally recognized the futility of resistance when faced with such massive force. They were halfway to Earth when the asteroids started moving. Captain Chan Wu, the first human to successfully ram an alien dreadnought and survive, was now commanding something much more ambitious: an entire asteroid field that had been converted into a weapons platform. The humans had spent months installing engines and guidance systems on thousands of asteroids in the outer solar system. What the Imperial fleet thought was empty space was actually the most extensive minefield in galactic history. "Attention, Imperial fleet," Chan Wu broadcasted from his command asteroid. "Welcome to the Sol system. You are now surrounded by approximately 12,000 guided asteroids, each equipped with nuclear engines and automated targeting systems. Please state your business." Fleet Commander Maltheus stared at his tactical display in horror. The asteroids were everywhere, and they were all moving toward his ships. His advanced sensors had missed them because they looked exactly like natural space debris until they started accelerating. "This is impossible," he declared. "You cannot weaponize an entire star system." "Watch us," Chan Wu replied. The battle that followed was later studied in military academies throughout the galaxy as the ultimate example of asymmetric warfare. The Imperial fleet, with all their advanced technology and superior firepower, found themselves being attacked by rocks. But these were very special rocks. Each asteroid had been carefully modified by human engineers to maximize damage while minimizing cost. Nuclear engines provided thrust, simple computers provided guidance, and the laws of physics provided the destruction. A 10-ton asteroid moving at significant velocity doesn't need sophisticated weapons systems. It just needs to hit something. The Imperial energy shields, designed to stop the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, were overwhelmed by the simple kinetic energy of accelerated space debris. Ships that could survive direct hits from antimatter torpedoes were crippled by rocks moving at relativistic speeds. "How many ships have we lost?" Malthus asked his tactical officer. 17 dreadnoughts, 43 cruisers, and over 200 support vessels, sir. "And how many enemy ships have we destroyed?" "None, sir. They're not using ships. They're throwing asteroids at us." 2 years after first contact, the galaxy looked very different than anyone could have imagined. The conference room on the neutral space station New Harmony hosted the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Representatives from dozens of species sat around a circular table, with human and imperial delegations facing each other across what had once been an unbridgeable divide. Admiral So-Min led the human delegation, accompanied by Captain Hyun-Woo, Dr. Min-Ho, and General In-Ho. Across from them sat Supreme Overlord Malthus, looking remarkably diminished from the being who had once ruled half the galaxy without question. The Imperial delegation had arrived with a single ship and a very different attitude than their previous interactions with humanity. "Admiral So-Min," Malthus began, "the Galactic Empire formally requests a cessation of hostilities and the establishment of diplomatic relations with the human territories." So-Min studied the document that had been placed before her. It was 3 pages long, a dramatic change from the 47,000-page integration protocols that had started this conflict. "This is quite a change from your last communication," she observed. "As I recall, your previous position was that resistance to imperial authority was impossible." "Circumstances have changed," Malthus replied carefully. "The Empire has reconsidered its policies regarding independent species. This was a masterpiece of diplomatic understatement. In the 2 years since humans had first said no to imperial demands, the Empire had lost control of over 300 star systems. Species that had been compliant members of the imperial community for centuries had simply declared independence and stopped following imperial regulations. The human example had spread like wildfire through the galaxy. Not just the military tactics, but the philosophical approach. The simple realization that the Empire's authority was based entirely on everyone's willingness to acknowledge it. Dr. Min-Ho had prepared a comprehensive analysis of the Imperial collapse for the human delegation. "The Empire is facing what we might call a bureaucratic cascade failure," he explained quietly to Admiral So-Min during a break in negotiations. "When enough species stop filing the proper forms, their entire administrative system breaks down." The SAS numbers were staggering. The Rigelian Trade Federation had been followed by the Andorian Mining Collective, then the Centauri Defense Corps, then dozens of smaller systems. Each departure made it easier for others to leave, as the Empire's enforcement capabilities became increasingly stretched. "What's remarkable," Dr. Min-Ho continued, "is that most of these species didn't even fight. They just stopped responding to Imperial communications. They ignored tax collection notices. They quit filing compliance reports. The Empire's entire governmental structure was built on voluntary participation that everyone assumed was mandatory. Ambassador Keleth of the Rigelian Trade Federation addressed the conference. Fellow delegates, the Rigelian Federation wishes to thank the human delegation for their educational approach to imperial relations. What did we teach you? General Inho asked with genuine curiosity. You taught us that the Empire's power was largely illusory. When they sent us enforcement fleets, we used the mining ship modifications you had shared with us. But more importantly, you taught us that we didn't need to ask permission to govern ourselves. Captain Hyunwoo leaned forward. The mining ship tactics worked? Ambassador Keleth actually smiled, which was unsettling given his species' facial structure. Admirably, Imperial dreadnoughts are apparently no more effective against Rigelian ore haulers than they were against human mining ships. We captured 6 vessels in our first engagement. Around the table, representatives from formerly Imperial species were nodding in agreement. The human approach to warfare had spread throughout the galaxy, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of copying human military tactics exactly, each species had adapted the basic principles to their own capabilities and circumstances. The Andorians, with their natural affinity for tunneling, had developed techniques for boarding enemy ships through their hulls rather than their docking bays. The Centaurians, who were naturally aquatic, had created underwater staging areas on worlds with oceans, and had proven remarkably effective at amphibious assault operations that Imperial forces had never been designed to counter. Even more importantly, species throughout the galaxy had adopted the human philosophical approach. The refusal to accept that superior technology automatically conferred legitimate authority. Supreme Overlord Maltheus listened to these reports with growing resignation. His empire hadn't been conquered by human military might. It had been dismantled by human ideas. The Empire, he said slowly, acknowledges that our previous integration policies may have been overly ambitious. Admiral Somin raised an eyebrow. Overly ambitious? Perhaps counterproductive would be more accurate, Maltheus admitted. It appears that many species prefer to manage their own affairs rather than benefit from imperial guidance. This was as close to an apology as anyone was likely to get from the former ruler of the galaxy. Captain Do-Yon, now commanding a small fleet of hybrid human imperial vessels, had been monitoring galactic communications during the negotiations. Her report was both amusing and sobering. Admiral, we're receiving messages from over 50 different star systems requesting technical assistance with imperial compliance issues. Apparently, everyone wants to learn how to convert civilian equipment into military hardware. Are we going to help them? We're already helping them. Engineering teams from Earth are spread across 30 systems, teaching alien miners how to modify their equipment and showing cargo pilots how to ram enemy ships effectively. It's become quite popular. This was perhaps the most remarkable development of all. Humanity had become the galaxy's premier consultants on resistance to authority. Human engineers were teaching alien species how to weaponize their own infrastructure, while human military advisors were spreading the doctrine of creative chaos throughout the galaxy. But the humans had been careful to avoid becoming a new imperial power themselves. Instead of conquering territory or establishing hegemony, They had simply made themselves available to anyone who wanted to learn how to be effectively independent. "We're not trying to rule the galaxy," Admiral So Min had explained to confused alien delegates. "We just want everyone to have the option of ruling themselves." General In-Ho addressed the conference with a perspective that had emerged from humanity's unique position in galactic affairs. 2 years ago, the Empire sent us forms and expected us to comply. Today, we're sitting at a table as equals, negotiating the future of the galaxy. What changed wasn't our military capability or our technology. What changed was our willingness to say no and mean it. He looked around the table at representatives from dozens of species, many of whom had been imperial subjects just months before. The Empire's greatest weapon was never their dreadnoughts or their energy weapons. It was the belief that resistance was impossible. Once that belief was broken, everything else followed. Supreme Overlord Malthius nodded slowly. The Empire underestimated the power of example. "You underestimated the power of choice," So Min corrected. "You assumed that if you made compliance easier than resistance, everyone would choose compliance. You never considered what would happen if someone chose resistance anyway and made it work." The final negotiations took 3 days. The resulting treaty was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of one large empire controlling numerous subject species, the galaxy would now be organized as a loose confederation of independent systems. The Empire would retain control over those worlds that genuinely wanted imperial governance, but they would no longer have authority over species that preferred independence. Trade routes would be managed by mutual agreement rather than imperial decree. Disputes would be resolved through negotiation rather than administrative pressure. Most importantly, the treaty established what became known as the human doctrine, the principle that any species had the right to govern itself according to its own values, free from external coercion. Captain Kyung-Soo, who had become famous throughout the galaxy for winning single combat while wearing construction equipment, was assigned to command the New Earth Embassy ship. His vessel, the converted alien cruiser Sol's Diplomacy, would serve as humanity's mobile diplomatic mission to the galaxy. "Sir," he asked Admiral So Min, "what exactly is our role going to be in this new galactic order?" "Troubleshooters," So Min replied. "Anytime a species decides they want to be independent but doesn't know how to make it work, they call us. We teach them what we've learned about being effectively stubborn." As the conference concluded, Ambassador Kelleth approached Dr. Min-Ho with a question that had been bothering many of the alien delegates. "Dr. Min-Ho, may I ask you something about human psychology?" "Of course." "Why did your species choose to resist when surrender would have been safer and easier?"